Welcome in. Jesse Shule here from jesseshule.com. Saturday morning college football kickoff show, and I'm joined by three special guests. We got Rye Cape, Tom Macrina from the Insiders Room. We got Joey Tron, his pal from the Insiders Room, and we got Dan's Rants here to talk about Duke and Florida State. I'm really looking forward to talking to these guys. I love actually debating these guys and hearing what they have to say. I feel like maybe I could learn something. And if I could learn something, then you could definitely learn something as well. Before we get started, let me tell you, we're rolling. We are rolling with all sports right now. Top of the leaderboards at several sites, coming off 3 straight sweeps. What are we, 10-1 with our last 11 MLB, 10-1 with our last 11 CFL. College football is pretty solid. NFL, we've kind of run into a bit of a, we're looking forward to breaking out of that slump here this Sunday. But let's not bore you any further. Let's bring in our first guest, Tom Macrina, Rye Cape. He's going to talk about Alabama, Tennessee. This is a huge game. I'm really looking forward to it. Rye, what do you got to say for yourself?
Yes, well, like Alabama looking for revenge, I'm looking for revenge from last week's USC beating.
Are you mad at me that I made you take USC last week?
I'm not, man. At least I didn't have to sweat it out. Man, that was done early.
Yeah, it was over pretty quick. It was pretty painless. To be fair, I don't make anybody take a side on this show. But maybe there was other games that you would have rather debated me on last week. To be fair to you, right?
I'm all right taking the USC. I was confident until the game started.
Well, how confident are you about the Tennessee Volunteers? Tell me everything you got for the Tennessee Volunteers today.
All right. So Tennessee is ranked 17th. They are 5-1 on the season. They just beat Texas A&M last week, 20-13, covering as a 3-point home favorite. On the other side, we have Alabama, who is also ranked. They're ranked number 11. They're 6-1 on the season. They just beat Arkansas 24-21, but they did fail to cover as 18-point home favorites. This is pretty much a must-win for Tennessee. They already have a conference loss, which was to Florida, which I consider a pretty bad loss. If we look at these teams, Alabama clearly has the better offense with their big play potential. Volunteers offense will have to rely on their run game, which they do most of the time. Tennessee has rolled out 40 points in 4 of their 6 games. They rank 6th in the country in rushing. They're number 1 in the SEC in total production for rushing, with 231.3 yards per game. So this will be one of the better defenses that Alabama has faced. The Vols have a dominant front 7. They create a ton of pressure. It should make things easier for the secondary, which has only given up 4 pass touchdowns this season. The team also ranks 4th in the nation in opponent yards per play and 15th in sack rate. Alabama's weakness here is their offensive line, so I expect the Vols to get pressure on Milroe, force mistakes. Outside of the deep ball, Milroe has had a ton of issues. I think he's going to struggle in this game. Defensively, Vols are very strong. They're disciplined. They should close Milroe's running lanes if he tries to extend plays. Milroe will get sacked. On the other side, Joe Milton has not been great in SEC play, but the Vols will have to throw the ball against his team. He does have 1,264 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but being one-dimensional will make Nick Saban's job easy. So Milton will have to play better than he did last week. I expect he will. Vols also had the better special teams. They give the offense good field position. Alabama hasn't looked impressive this season. We all know that. Tennessee beat Alabama last season, so I don't think they're going to be afraid to go into Alabama to play this team. Alabama will have revenge on its mind, but I think this is a tight game to the very end, just like last season. I think this number is this number is too high, too many points. I like Alabama to cover or Tennessee to cover here.
Well, Rye, great analysis. As always, you come well prepared. You delivered, and almost, I was going to say everything you said is correct, and I agree with everything. There's one thing that you said just near the end that I'm just going to have to debate you on and say that I disagree with the statement that you made, and that is that Alabama has not been impressive. And of course, that's a subjective thing. That's a matter of opinion. But it's my opinion, and one of the reasons why I like this play so much on Alabama is that Alabama had points in this season, in the beginning of the season, where they looked like they weren't impressive, but they've won 5 straight. And during that span, which more encompasses where they are right now, I think they're actually pretty impressive. Jalen Milroe, as you mentioned, is limited as a quarterback. Aside from he's quite accurate with the deep ball, which is obviously very important. His short passing game leaves a lot to be desired. That is correct. You were spot on with basically everything else you said. But the conclusion that I get from that is, while Tennessee is great defensively, while Tennessee is strong at running the ball, I just think that, Tennessee's got a great defense. Alabama's got an elite defense. Alabama's at home. I don't know if do you watch the Pat McAfee show, Ron?
I don't.
Okay, well, a lot of us do. And a lot of us that have watched the Pat McAfee show, we see Saban interviewed every week, and we can see in the background on his desk, there's a binder that says Tennessee. And a lot of people on the internet are talking about it. This is a revenge game. Saban is not a guy that likes to be beaten. He's a guy that stews over stuff like that all year long. I believe he's got his team ready to beat this Tennessee team into oblivion. And I just think it's a terrible matchup for Tennessee. Yeah, they're a very effective rushing offense, but on the road at Alabama, it's tough to see them winning a game by running the ball exclusively. They need Milton to come in and have a great game, and we just haven't seen that from Milton. Milton hasn't shown any signs of having a great game. Milroe, as you mentioned, has also looked, not so great, but Milroe has this connection with Jermaine Burton that came out in the Texas A&M game, something that we hadn't seen before. It seemed like quite a mismatch. There was several occasions where Milroe could just go deep to Jermaine Burton, and Texas A&M had no defense for it. We'll see how Tennessee handles that. At the end of the day, 8.5, 9. I'm giving you the 9 because I think the line is pretty much 9 across the board here. I just think it's a double-digit win for Alabama. There we go. We can see you right there. Tom Macrina. By the way, we've called you Rye Cape on the show the last few weeks. You do appear on several sites by your given name, Tom Macrina, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know which you prefer, or if you do prefer, but we've got it listed there as Tom Macrina is taking Tennessee +9. And what are you, 1-1 against me so far on this show, Brian?
1-1, yeah. We
so this is the rubber match.
We lost USC, exactly.
This is the rubber match. All right, the big money. Okay, well, looking forward to that. But yeah, like I say, I just think it's a terrible matchup for Tennessee. I don't think their offense has what it takes to get one over on this Alabama defense, and I do see the flaws in Alabama's offense as well. But there's just there is some upside to Milroe in the deep passing game, and that just doesn't exist for Tennessee so far from what we've seen. So that's why I like Alabama in this spot. So before we send you backstage, Rye, why don't you tell us what you got going on? You did mention that you were in a bit of a slump of late. We don't want to dwell on that. So tell us what you're looking forward to. College basketball is coming. What? Keep it positive, Rye. Tell us
Sure.
what's good
So,
in the future.
Actually, this week has been pretty decent for me. I've done well in college football this week, so hopefully it stays with us into the weekend. I do have 2 plays over on the insidersroom.com for college football. I've been doing well in hockey, so that helps me as well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to NBA. College basketball starting soon, so I'll have some plays for there. I usually do well in college basketball. So, yeah, I'm betting everything. Hopefully I start winning everything.
Sometimes it just happens just like that. And well, Rye, thanks for stopping in, and we will get back to you when we have the roundtable discussion. But we're going to move into our discussion with Dan the Man. Dan, I hear you like Florida State in this big ACC game today. Big question over the quarterback, Riley Leonard. And I don't know if he's going to play, and I don't think you do either, do you?
Yeah, I actually just took a brief second there to maybe try to find that answer. I think as at least for right now, maybe we assume he does play, but at what effect at this point? Obviously, a lot of what he does is being mobile and making some stuff happen. So, kind of a hard game to go at here, and there's obviously some better games on the board, but.
I think that both of us do agree what to do if he doesn't play, though. So why don't you tell me what your plan of attack is if he doesn't play?
So be on Twitter, wherever you get your news, whoever you trust. As soon as this news comes out, now being this news, we're as sports bettors, we're kind of. I mean, obviously, everyone wants to see a competitive game. I kind of want to see him play. I kind of want to just watch some more good football later here today. But I, as a sports bettor, am kind of hoping he's out so I can hop on the under as soon as I can. I don't know what the number is at. I believe it's either 48.5 or 49.5. I'm pretty sure.
I think 49.5 is still available. And like I said, we both agree on that. If Riley Leonard's out and it's the backup quarterback, he doesn't look like he can move the ball. It would look like Duke would go into a shell and try and extend the game and slow it down. I personally think the Duke's defense is good enough to do that. We'll get into that moving forward. So I know that you like Florida State, so why don't you tell us about that, Dan?
Well, I'm 1-0 here on the morning show, so I'm trying to save my undefeated record here. So I guess
it was a close game. Your one win was a last second 2-point conversion. I will point that out.
It was yeah. I would feel better betting black or red at the roulette wheel than that game. But as far as this game goes, I think we just need to start off by saying this is a home game for Florida State, and this is not a noon Eastern time kickoff. We're looking at 7:30. Are you hearing an echo on my audio? Do you want me to turn this down maybe?
I think you're sounding good to me.
Oh, all right. So yeah, home night game. Want to start off with that. Number 2 is we're looking at Duke or Florida State has only not covered the spread against Duke one time since 2006. So that particular reason isn't the best because obviously the Duke team this year and even last year too is like worlds apart from Duke football. They've come a long way, just like Kansas. So when you start to look into statistics and reasons to go against Duke and they go like too far back in history, not the best point because it's just different football, different program, things change. I don't like looking at trends that go like way back into the dinosaur age. Things are just different. Sometimes I'll look at, if you got a quarterback that's been at a school for 5-6 years or something, and maybe you want to look like that deep in the past, but they only have one. I mean, it's been a Florida State dominant series here for a while. Not the best. What I like better is the fact that even if Riley Leonard plays in this game, how effective is he going to be? He really does need to be 100% to make that Duke offense have a little bit of a spark. I think Duke likes to run the ball, right? I don't know how explosive Duke is going to be in this game. And I just worry that if he's not even like 90%, if he's not even like 85%, is that going to completely shut down, what Duke's able to do on offense? And at the end of the day, as good as Duke's defense is, they are going to have to score at least something to keep it within the number against Florida State. Duke's defense, everyone's high on. It's no surprise. It's no mystery. They're good. They're solid. That's a legitimate defensive group. But what happens in basketball too? Good offense always beats a good defense, at least in my opinion. You throw some balls up to Johnny Wilson or Coleman, even with good coverage, even with the guy in position, the catches are going to be made here. I look at Florida State. They're more balanced. They don't have to rely on just chucking up a deep ball to the receivers. They don't have to only run the ball like West Virginia, where I went to school. We got a balanced attack. We know even against the Duke defense, Florida State, there will be points on the board here. So how does Duke keep it within the number? Another thing I kind of look at is that Notre Dame game, which was a home game, which was college game day, which was about as hype as you can get for Duke. Sam Hartman, he's like a system quarterback, right? So he's okay at times, and he can kind of do what Notre Dame wants him to do. But I think Notre Dame really leaned on Estime on the ground and a good defense to kind of keep Duke in check, just to kind of grind out that win. And obviously, we saw that sort of lucky late cover there with Notre Dame. This game, I see a way more balanced offense, a way more capable quarterback, and I know you're going to be going against what I'm about to say, but Duke on the road, what have we seen? I don't put any stock in the NC State. I really don't put any stock in NC State. I think NC State is very bad. This is a home night game for Florida State. They get up for certain opponents. They sleepwalk through others. If you look at the Virginia Tech game, I believe Florida State was laying 22.5 in that game. And they were up 21-0, I think, in almost a snap of a fingers. And then they just kind of went to bed, and they ended up winning, but missed the cover by about 1 point or something. It was crazy. I was on Florida State against Virginia Tech, and I was looking good early, but it didn't end up panning out late. I think it's different here. I think Florida State, having a ranked opponent, having a night game, having some people that like Duke in this position. And by the way, 66% of the money against the spread is on Duke here. I like Florida to show up early, to not let off the gas pedal, balanced offensive attack. I still think they score 30 even on Duke defense. I think the Duke defense gets worn down throughout the game. I'm looking at a Florida State cover here.
Well, thank you, Dan. I don't disagree with really anything you said. And I think it's quite astute of you, quite sharp, not to lean on some stats that go back 5 or 6 years, because I would have picked that apart if you had have leaned on some of those 5 or 6 year old stats. And the fact that you qualified that was very sharp on your part. Your point about Duke on the road, 5 of their games have been at home this year, so they don't really have a resume to lean back on the road. And last year they were 3-3 on the road. They did beat Miami 45-21. Miami's not Florida State, granted, but Tyler Van Dyke did play in that game. They did score 45 points. And what you said is correct. They have to score points if they want to hang in this game. And they probably need Riley Leonard to do that. And they probably need to force turnovers. And what you said about a great offense always trumps a good defense. I'm not going to say I disagree with that. I think what I'm going to say is I don't think their corners can go one-on-one against Johnny Wilson and Coleman. If Jordan Travis gets the time to throw to those receivers, it's going to be a tough matchup for the corners. But they need to cause the havoc so that he doesn't get the time. They need to force him to make decisions faster than he wants to make them, possibly get a few touches on him, rough him up a little bit. And Jordan Travis is the kind of quarterback that he kind of plays a game where he's often holding the ball and running with the football and taking a lot of hits. And Duke would love to get some lickings in on him. And if they can do that, that might change this game. One thing I will disagree with you is about the result of NC State. You mentioned that, NC State's not a very good team. And yeah, sure. But with their backup quarterback, and he didn't do anything, they still won, 24-3, or they held NC State to 3 points. I mean, NC State has played Notre Dame. They scored 24 on Notre Dame, granted at home, but that's a massive difference, 3-24. They played Louisville, which Louisville's a 5-1 team right now, or something like that.
I had them plus 3.5 against Louisville. I thought that was going to be an outright win. I don't put any stock into Louisville, though. I think Louisville is extremely overrated.
Probably overrated. Yeah, no, I get you, but I don't think you can just discount holding NC State to 3 points when you've got a quarterback that can't move the football, when your offense is so held back. Your defense is good enough to just almost win the game on its own, is what I'm saying.
Duke defense, undoubtedly very good group. But what happens when you rely on them, and then you rely on them again, and then you rely on them again? How many times can they bail an offense out?
Yeah, I think there's no question. Riley Leonard has to play. He has to play relatively well. They have to probably score somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 points. So we're looking at 33-21 or somewhere in that neighborhood.
How is Duke going to get to that level if LSU could only get to 24? LSU only scored 24 on
very simple answer. Very simple answer. LSU's defense wasn't making any stops. Duke's defense has to make the stops. Get the ball more times. Create more short fields. Get in short fields by making those stops.
Are they going to get the ball that many times, though, if Florida State's putting together 8-9 minute drives? The way I look at it, if Florida State's passing is effective enough to where you got to run 2 deep safeties, you got a light box, Florida State can run the ball too. I'm not so sure that. I mean, they put almost 200 yards on the ground against Cuse. I know Cuse is. They've looked obviously very suspect this year, but
I don't think you can compare Duke to Cuse this year. I don't think that's a fair comparison.
All right.
Based on what Duke did last year on the road, it's 14 points is right where you sort of expect it to be, and it, like I said, if Duke gets the pressure on Jordan Travis, they could make this a game. And I think the reason I chose this game is just because I think a lot of people want to write Duke off. They want to say this team just isn't that good. And I'm firmly in the camp that Florida State's the better team. Florida State can beat Duke by 20 or 30 if everything goes well. There's no question. I don't debate that. Yeah. Everything doesn't go well every week. This is basically the last trouble spot. I mean, people might say, well, on the road at Florida in the last week, but if you've seen Florida play lately, Duke's a much tougher test than Florida, in my mind. And this is the one game. And could we see something happen here? It's a lot of points for a team that plays that well defensively, especially if Riley Leonard's playing, because with Riley Leonard, they can score 20 points.
Yep. And you never know when a team's up 20 and they know mathematically it's over. We got the win. But what happens in the last few minutes of the game? Maybe you put one in the back of the end zone.
Well,
you get that.
Doesn't it seem like every game we've picked on this show has come down to something like that?
You get that margin down to, maybe it goes from 17 to 10 in the last minute or something like that. So
it'll be interesting. It'll probably come down to how healthy Riley Leonard is. Whether he plays or not. But I'm glad that we both agree that if Leonard does not play, we both think hit the under if you get a chance to get that number before it moves.
I it'll be fun. Just kind of as a sample size, maybe something you write down in your notes, to look back on in the future, to look at the line right now, to look at if the news comes out the way maybe some people see it, to see how much line movement we get with that total. I try to keep it. I've been trying to keep a journal lately, just with certain games I see and certain things and what moves based on what factors. And, maybe a couple years down the road, you can look back at all these notes and get a little bit of an edge in the future. But I would love to either see a competitive football game and have fun here, or take advantage of an under at a pretty heavy risk.
Certainly the line does indicate to me that the status of Riley Leonard is just up in the air. It's gone from 13.5 to 15, and it's bouncing back and forth, and it shows me that nobody really knows one way or the other.
And if he plays, how effective?
This is true. And he's the kind of guy that he's not really a pure pocket passer. He needs to be mobile to be effective is the thing.
I guess to kind of end this segment off, the what I would put the most stock into, even good defenses, they do wear down. I just don't think Duke has the guts to get the ball back to the offense 8, 9, 10 times. I just don't see it. I mean, maybe the first half is competitive because it's 13-6 or something, but eventually I think you break through. And I do think Florida State, having a big ranked Duke team in town, a program that's totally on the rise, just like Kansas in the Big 12, which is my favorite conference because I went to school at West Virginia. So I think the way you view Duke is very similar to the way I view Kansas. I think
I view them both in a positive light, really, and I think both those schools are up and coming, and people want to push them back down. Nobody wants to let them into the club. Everybody wants to say, "Oh, you're still that basketball school. We're not letting you into our club." Well, they're banging on the door, and I choose to recognize that. They're fighting for their spot, and I think they're doing a pretty damn good job. Both those schools. That's my opinion.
I think they were banging on the door last year, both of those schools, and now the door is actually opened and they're saying hello. But at this point, I think the door is open enough to where now some of the better programs in the conferences, they really don't want to lay an egg against what used to be a guaranteed win on the schedule. So I do have a little concern for Duke, that Duke being ranked, Florida State, home night game, Florida State might really want to put it on them.
I hope not. I really want to see a competitive game here, but we've gone over our time. Dan, why don't you tell us what you got going on TikTok, where people can find you, everything else?
Yeah, Dan's Rants on TikTok. Undoubtedly been cold there for about, it's got to be about a week now, but was hitting at over 84% on TikTok through, I think, the first full 4 weeks, both NFL and college, was like 11-0 on live bets, some crazy stuff. You can check out TikTok if you want. You can check out the Dan's Rants YouTube page, my official plays for college today, NFL tomorrow. They're already posted. I personally don't have a website yet, nothing like that. Everything on my end is for free. If you're curious what I have to say, you can check out my YouTube page and find all my official picks. There's 2 videos.
And the link for Dan and Rye and Joey is in the description of this video. Let's get you out of here, Dan. We'll bring you back in a second, but let's let Joey Tron have his say. Thank you for being patient, Joey. You had to listen to Dan rant, but what do you have to say for yourself? You're looking at Clemson today, I understand.
Yeah, patience is a virtue, Jesse. Patience is a virtue, and I'm ready to get a win. I'm ready to get a win today after the barnstormer push we had last week.
You've been very patient in your quest to get a win against me, haven't you?
I have. That was a great game though last week.
Yeah,
Oregon offense was phenomenal.
I mean, we're trying to pick the games that are going to unfold like that, right? We're trying to pick the games that are the margins are thin. These are the fun games to talk about, and that was a great game, great finish. This one could be a great game as well. I had Miami last week, and back-to-back weeks I've been wrong on Miami. It would be easy for me to shy away and say, "Oh, this team sucks," but that's not how I roll. They're still catching 3.5 at home, or 3. It's down to 3 as of game time. I'm ready to take Miami, but you're taking Clemson. Why don't you tell me what you have to say about the whole thing?
Yeah, I like Clemson to cover this one on the road. I see why you like the points from Miami. It does look like a good rebound spot for them, but after the last 2 weeks, I don't know if I can back a team like Miami. Clemson defense is ranked in the top 50 in almost every category here. They're 21st defensively in total yards allowed, 43rd in passing yards allowed, and 20th in rushing yards, and they're only conceding about 19 points per game. Clemson has played, in my opinion, pretty solid against good teams as of late. They took Florida State to overtime. They beat Syracuse by 17, and they just recently beat Wake Forest by 5. Cade Klubnik has had a phenomenal season so far, Clemson quarterback. He's averaging 228 yards per game, and he has thrown 4 straight games without an interception here. Miami has a -3 turnover margin coming into this game, and granted, a lot of those turnovers came in their last 2 games where they totaled 9 turnovers. After a soft schedule, Miami played 2 ACC teams back-to-back, and they allowed 21 plus in both games and 41 of those to North Carolina. And like I said earlier, I really don't think this is a good spot for Miami. They did have such high hopes starting the season, especially with that big win over Texas A&M. But now they're getting to the nitty-gritty of their ACC schedule, and we saw what they've done in their first 2 games. And Clemson has dominated this series against Miami, and I don't think we see anything changing today.
All right, Joey. Well, from where I'm sitting, I'm seeing a team with 2 losses that's down in the dumps. They've looked horrible. Everybody's writing them off. Wake me up if you've heard this story before, because this sounds like Clemson in the first few weeks of the season. They lost 2 games. They were down and out. They looked horrible. Everybody wanted to bet against Clemson. And what happens? Clemson flips the switch and, oh, wow, we're back. So why can't Miami do that same thing? If you look at Miami's last 2 games and why they've lost their last 2 games, unforced errors, turnovers, bad mistakes have been hurting them, and I think they can correct those mistakes. I mean, you could say maybe they continue to make those mistakes, but eventually you can only turn the ball over so many times. Eventually the turnover luck will shift toward your favor. It's a home game. They're catching points at home. It's a desperation game for Miami. They're probably already out of the hunt for the ACC, but if they want to stay alive at all, they have to win this game, which is exactly where Clemson was at a few weeks ago, and we saw them turn things around. And you mentioned Cade Klubnik in his fantastic season. I don't know if I would count it as fantastic. He got off to a slow start. He's been a little bit better lately, maybe against inferior opponents. But I still think Van Dyke is the superior quarterback here. I think I'm giving the home team the edge at the quarterback position. And, Clemson's got history on their side. But as Dan mentioned, the history when we go back 5-6 years doesn't reflect on the current roster that we're seeing today, or the coaching staff for that matter. I'm going to take the points with the home team. I don't love it, but I feel committed to back these Miami Hurricanes until they get me a win. And again, I'm not ready to say that I was wrong about my picks on Miami in the previous losses. I'm saying that what unfolded in those games was a lot of luck, a lot of things that you can't account for with the turnovers and the mistakes that were made. And I have faith that eventually they will turn that around, correct those mistakes, avoid the turnovers. I think they're a good enough team to hang with Clemson, at least keep the game within 3 points. So I'm going to take Miami as the home dog. But Joey, before we bring everybody else in here, why don't you tell everybody how you've been doing, what you got? I know you're really excited about college basketball, so you definitely want to tell us about that. It's starting soon, and where they can find your picks.
Yeah, so you can find me over at the Insiders Room, insidersroom.com under Joey Tron. I've had a really good start to the NHL season so far. 10-4 to start the season. Won my last 4 straight. I have one NHL play up tonight, as well as 2 college football. And yeah, I'm really excited for college basketball. I was the #1 capper on Pick Advisor last season, but a 56% win rate, and you're up over 13 units if you took every one of my plays. So I'm pretty excited to get back with college basketball. I think it's like 3 weeks away, a little less than 3 weeks. So looking forward to that one.
Geez, I'm still overwhelmed just trying to handicap college football, NFL, soccer, baseball playoffs, CFL, NHL. You know, I got my hands full. Last thing I need is more work, but I love college.
A small niche that I like, and that's college basketball and hockey for me.
Yeah, I love college basketball as well. I don't focus on it as heavily until conference play kicks off, though. But let's bring the boys in. Let's talk about some other games here. If you got 15 minutes or so, Joey.
Yeah.
So, guys, the big game kicks off shortly. Penn State at Ohio State. Is there anybody on this panel that thinks Ohio State is the play at -4.5? Raise your hand if you like Ohio State. No, I don't. Nobody likes Ohio State.
Some of us are biased.
Yeah.
I'm from the area, so of course I like Penn State.
I'm an alumni, so I like Penn State.
I'm a little concerned with the amount of people that like Penn State. The quarterback, if he just screws up like 1 or 2 times, is going to be the difference in the cover here. So, I mean, if that guy throws like a pick or 2, probably looking at an Ohio State cover. You could say the same for the other side, though. Penn State's defense, it's legit.
Yeah, but I mean, is there anything that would suggest that Aller? I mean, I guess Aller's playing on the road, so potentially a tougher spot. But if you look at their resumes, what's to suggest Aller shitting the bed rather than McCord? I mean, to me, it's quite clear that Aller's got better stats than McCord, based on the fact that he's playing in a team that isn't based around throwing the ball and lighting it up they're not a fast-paced, lighted up on offense type of team at Penn State. And I got a big argument with a guy in the chat at Winner's Circle podcast over this Aller versus McCord debate. And I didn't come out and say Aller's a better quarterback because it's small. I think we haven't seen enough of either of them. I mean, neither team has really been tested, in my opinion. I know Ohio State played Notre Dame, but I'm not going to make too many judgments over that. I mean, they only scored 17 points, so I mean, they shouldn't hang their hat on that too much. And it wasn't McCord really that had this brilliant game, but yeah, I mean, you just look at McCord's stats and you compare them to previous Ohio State quarterbacks. You look at Justin Fields, you look at C.J. Stroud, Dwayne Haskins. You look over the year in the last decade. I don't think I've ever seen an Ohio State quarterback with these kind of numbers. These are Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska type numbers. They're not Ohio State numbers that you're seeing. And people say, well, blah, 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 but at the end of the day, their offense is designed to run up scores. They've got Marvin Harrison Jr., they've got Trevion Henderson, who's been banged up, but they've got 5-star recruits at skill positions that are designed to allow a quarterback to put up video game numbers. And if you're not putting up those video game numbers, what does that mean about you as a quarterback? And so I have some serious concerns about the upside for Kyle McCord at this point. Any comments on that?
Another thing is I just checked it as we're speaking right now. Travion Henderson, right? Game time decision for Ohio State. That's a big deal. I think that is a big deal. Without
And the line's down to 4. You can't get a 4.5 anymore, probably because of what you just said.
You can get a 4.5 on FanDuel right now, but it's juiced to shit. I think it's -120.
Anybody got a strong opinion on the total? I'm assuming he's talking about the Ohio State game. I've got a stronger opinion about the Alabama Tennessee total than I do about the Penn State Ohio State total. Just because, as you said, Dan, Aller could throw some picks, or there's a lot of things that could happen based on the fact that we haven't seen these two teams.
I feel like it's one of those games where you might see some 6.5-minute drives that get to a fishy spot to where analytics tell you to go for it and they don't get it, and then that's less points scored. I don't know. This could really be this could really be like 26-20 in overtime or something.
Did you guys see that interview with James Franklin when they asked him about throwing the ball downfield? And don't you think you just ought to throw the ball down? And he's like, what are you talking about? Just throw the ball downfield for no reason, no, we're not going to do. You guys see that interview?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Ohio State does that all the time.
But didn't that sort of sound like he was playing coy in the way that, we've got a plan to throw downfield. We're just not going to show you right now. You know what I mean? There's this, there is this conspiracy theory going that Penn State's fully capable of lighting it up in the air, and they've just been holding it back because they haven't needed to use it, and they're going to unleash it on Ohio State. And that might be a little out there, and how effective that might even be. But when I heard that interview and when I heard his response, it made me think he's hiding. That sounds a little bit dishonest. You know what I mean? It just didn't sound that on. It sounded like he's playing with people when he said that, the way he responded to those questions. You guys agree, or?
Yes, I agree.
Don't be surprised if they light one up downfield the first play of the game.
Yeah, it kind of led me to believe that they might just come out and think, you don't think we get pass? Well, we're going to show you.
Drew Aller's got a cannon, man. He can launch that. He can throw that ball pretty damn far.
If he doesn't go to the NFL sooner than he should, that program's in good shape here for a considerable amount of time.
Ohio State's defense is pretty good, so we'll see how it goes. I feel pretty comfortable with Penn State plus the points, just because one of the things is I've heard a lot of people out there on YouTube and online saying, "Oh, Penn State hasn't played anybody," and I kind of think that's a rather lame, uneducated, misinformed kind of argument here, because I'm not saying Penn State has played a tough schedule. I just don't think that's as significant as people are making it out to be. They've dominated everybody they've played. The teams, Ohio State, like I said, they played Notre Dame. They scored 17 points. They won on what was it, fourth and 15 or something that they needed to convert to not to lose that game. So that's what you're going to hang your hat on, that their strength of schedule is so much better than Penn State's.
Maryland first half was not impressive.
well, yeah, but that will be used to say, well, we beat Maryland by 20, so therefore our strength of schedule is so superior. Well, you got housed by Maryland for 3 or 2.5 quarters, and then eventually beat them by 20. But getting housed by them at home for the first 2.5 quarters doesn't inspire confidence to me. So yeah, I think it's a really flawed argument that Penn State hasn't played anybody. So yeah, I just wanted to get that on record.
The only thing, and this isn't, I've heard you guys say this on Winner's Circle. Public's not always wrong, but at least as of last night, for what I use for statistics, 74% was on Penn State against the spread.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I don't love hearing that, Dan, but it's not going to change my. It's not going to make me think
it's not 90. It's not 90.
I'm not going to think that I'm wrong because the public agrees with me.
Especially on a game like this, that's totally up in the air.
I mean, I have my opinion, and if the public wants to agree with me, all the power to them. Good for them.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not going to change my opinion because
74 is not like alarm bells going off. Now, I will say one thing. I will say just like a bonus thing. Obviously, you can see it in the background. I went to West Virginia University. They're at home today. Usually, betting against the Mountaineers at home is an absolute no-no. I think I saw 91% of the spread money is on West Virginia -3 at home. I personally sprinkled Oklahoma State plus the 3.5. I think that was on Thursday against the Mountaineers at home. Too many injuries. West Virginia with a full roster is a very legitimate team. But this week, Oklahoma State kind of on the rise. I would consider Oklahoma State and some points in your back pocket.
Well, you brought up an excellent point yesterday on the live show for the Winner's Circle, Dan, of you judge a team based on their overall statistics on the season, their record, and how their offense ranks. But what if their starting quarterback only played a couple games? They played 6 games. They've only had their starting quarterback for 2 of those games. Basically, you got to throw all those stats out. I mean, how they rank offensively, points per game, yards per play, all that stuff. It's just garbage. It just doesn't mean anything because they've only had their starting quarterback for a small percentage of that overall data point. And I thought that was an excellent point. It's something that I often use in my handicapping process. And I think as much as I do use strength of schedule, I think it's a very strong indicator. Strength of schedule to me is a very strong indicator when used correctly. But I think you need to dig into it. It needs to be combined with the eye test, and you need to break it down and say, well, why is this team ranked highly in strength of schedule? What game did they let? And as we just mentioned with the Ohio State game, Maryland is boosting their strength of schedule, and that was an ugly game that made them look like dog shit. So the idea that because they played Maryland and they almost were losing in the fourth, it was a terrible game for Ohio State, but that's going to improve their rankings in the end. That doesn't pass the eye test. I think that's why when it comes to strength of schedule, you got to dig a little bit deeper in. You got to see who is available for those games. You got to see who they played. So they beat a team that's highly ranked, but that team's starting quarterback didn't play in that game. So that
Maryland. Did you watch Charlotte? Did you watch the Illinois game? Maryland. I took some heat because I was against Maryland like a lot of weeks, and they just kept like pulling the rabbit out of their hat at the end of the game with big fourth quarters. But I'm not high on Maryland at all.
Well, I guess I was high on them when they played Ohio State, and I was practically counting my money until the last 5 minutes of the game, and Rye got quite lucky.
That's all right. Rye likes to get lucky.
No, I just think that strength of schedule is something that needs to be you need to be careful with how you're going to use that in your handicapping process, and you need to account for who's playing these games. Like Dan said, Baylor's quarterbacks only played a couple games. They're a different team when he's in there. You can't be giving teams credit for beating teams when they've been they don't have their best players on the field, and most of those rankings that people use today, because everybody that on the internet's using these advanced analytics, and I don't think most of them are putting it in perspective correctly.
Baylor just dropped from 3.5 to 3. Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe just go money line there with the Bears today.
So we did get a question about the Alabama-Tennessee total. Rye, you talked about this game. What do you think about the under?
Yeah, so I do like the under. I think obviously both teams like to rush the ball. Both teams are strong defensively. I like the under here. I'm thinking like a 24-17 game, something like that.
Yeah, I think 27-17 for Alabama. That's what I'm going with.
I said 24-17.
Yeah, I know, but I was correct. That's why I corrected you, Ryan.
47. Man, I didn't know it was 47. I don't know. I'm going to have to stay away from that.
Is it down to 47 already?
Maybe you get some defensive scores in this game. I'm not sure here. 47. God, that seems like that's almost that's almost to the point where it scares me to go under.
It was 49.5 a couple of days ago. I mean, I'm pretty sure I booked in at 48.5 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I do like the under in that game, to answer Al's question. Guys, I got somewhere to be. We've been going for 51 minutes. I appreciate all of you for stopping by. I hope to see you in the future on the Saturday Kickoff Show. I will mention, I've been talking to my man Sean Higgs. We're talking about doing a Thursday night football kickoff show on Thursday mornings in the same time slot. If any of you guys are interested, or if anybody out there listening is interested, please hit me up on my direct messages on Twitter and let's set it up, because this is a ton of fun. Like I say, I enjoy chatting with you guys. I think we all learn something, myself included. I think it's a good exercise to get a couple of sharp minds together and start hashing over the way everybody's seeing and interpreting the way these games are going to unfold. And I think it's all a positive exercise. I enjoy doing it. I look forward to doing it again. So thank you for joining me, and we will see you again hopefully next week.
Let's cash some tickets.